If the government can print money, why do they tax you? Here's what everyone gets wrong. They think printing money is how government pay for things. But here's the truth. Printing money is how they steal from you. Taxes, taxes are how they control you. Because without taxes, you wouldn't need their dollars. You could use gold, Bitcoin, anything. But the IRS says that you need to pay them in dollars. And if you don't pay, they're going to put you in prison. So taxes are about funding the government. They're about forcing you to participate in a system designed to drain your wealth. And the interesting thing about all of this is that the United States, once they lose faith in the fiat dollar or the people around the world, well, that's when the dollar fails. And now we have a very influential figure in Nayib Bukele saying the quiet parts out loud. So in today's video, we're going to dive into how this global debt spiral is already out of control, how governments around the world are already starting to show that they're losing faith in the dollar, and what that means for you and your savings account. But first, let's get into what Nayib Bukele had to say with the quiet parts out loud.
Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money out of thin air, why did they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking.
So the answer is simple. It's very shocking. They need your money in order for you to keep this whole facade and this whole fiat currency issue thing going. And that's the biggest underlying problem here, is that the government is losing control. The government is going to now take measures in order to accelerate that control that they previously had over you. I mean, we've already seen it. In the past 5 years alone, 60% of that money supply has already been printed. The 99% are going to suffer from these inflationary policies that they are putting in, or that 1% that owns assets, well, that 1%, they will be able to now see this asset bubble rise up and they'll be okay. But the reality is that these big guys, they see that from the 1%. They say, oh, inflation is dropping. The Fed should be cutting rates. They should be injecting more liquidity into the market now. But let me ask you something. Do you really think that this injecting of liquidity is going to be something that's positive? Because we've all seen it. The Fed has changed that 2% target to 3 to 4 to 5% target. We've already seen that the Fed is going to keep on moving that bar farther down. And now we have governments around the world saying the quiet parts out loud, saying that, hey, we don't benefit from this money printing that the United States is doing. So why should we be encouraging all of it when we have Scott Bessent coming out and saying, hey, you know what? Even though the U.S. is $38 trillion in debt, and it's the fastest accumulation of $1 trillion in debt outside of the pandemic. When, let me remind you, in that pandemic, like I said before, 60% of that money supply was printed and the entire world shut down. Granted, I know we are in a 1-month shutdown of the government, but that's just the United States and mainly half the party here that's just shut down and on strike. So with the United States adding so much in debt, it's honestly incredible when you look at the numbers, because if you really take a step back and break down these numbers, the analysis is quite shocking, because the amount of debt that is created every single day, every single second, is astronomical. In fact, we add $69,000 worth of debt every single second. And the average American wage right now in the year 2025 of our Lord is $63,000. So let's take a step back and look at this, because you can literally work as an average worker in the United States for an entire year, pay your entire salary in taxes, and that would not even cover up to 1 second worth of debt that the United States is accumulating. And that number keeps on accelerating because this is just as October 3rd of 2025. We had $37.8 trillion. We've crossed that Rubicon of 38 trillion. So it's already 2.17 trillion higher than a year ago. That's another $2 trillion higher, like I said. $10.83 trillion higher than 5 years ago. And we get nearly 6 billion per day, 250 million per hour, and 4.14 million per minute. So Trump has come out and said that he wants that golden age of that economic desires here, right? He wants to see all of these things pumping up, but it's the first time in history that we've seen the stock market up by 33%, but the job market down by 33%. So these numbers are actually very staggering and shocking, to say the very least, because as we continue to go through all of this and look at the numbers of the debt, well, I'm going to break down the full-on math today on when I project that debt spiral is going to go out of control and we're going to reach that hyperinflation mark. Because granted, we still are a little ways away from that, but we are starting to see the signs and the cracks are starting to surface here slowly. So make sure you guys are hitting that like button to spread this around and share this one with friends, because I'm going to be showing you guys how just the lunacy of a lot of these numbers that we're seeing. The interest payments on the national debt have exceeded defense spending for the first time in history. And they did it partially for the first time in 2024. And look at this parabolic amount of annual interest payments as it skyrocketed in flight. It absolutely took off. I mean, this is a parabolic thing that you don't want to see. And, the spending figures, for example, defense spending has gone down, and we've seen a lot of, hey, we're getting out of places. We're not competing in as many wars. So maybe this is a positive. But usually when we have the most advanced military in the world, we have a lot of people coming at us, to say the very least, right? So the government is continuing to print massive amounts of money, and they are going to be watching very so closely on how this is turning up a notch, to say the very least. Because look, I mean, if you look at the Weimar, Zimbabwe, and the Argentina playbook, well, this is more about the hyperinflation. And I'm not comparing these times to Weimar, Zimbabwe, or anything like that, but we do have some interesting call outs and some differences because, yes, I get it. Everybody says this time is different, but now we're having the United States come out and say that they want to compete in the crypto space. And we have Putin's advisors literally coming out and saying that Donald Trump and company are now looking at using Bitcoin and crypto to pay their way out of this $35 trillion debt. And we had something interesting from the United States here come out and say, or Donald Trump come out here and say about China here very recently as well. Now let's listen into what Donald Trump had to say.
You want to go after people, you're going to kill that industry, and it'll be very bad. Tremendous number of jobs. I campaigned positively on crypto, very openly. I campaigned. Biden campaigned against it. When Biden found out that I was getting like 100% of the crypto vote, which was a lot, he switched totally, and he went in favor of crypto. They went totally in favor. They had many.
So what he said with all of this, outside of his just meandering about Biden and all of these different things, he says China is getting very big into Bitcoin and crypto, and he only cares about one thing: being number one. That you can't be number one or you can't be number two because it's all about number one. But as I've lined out here many times on this channel, and for those of you guys who keep coming back, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me. But Tether and these now crypto tokens, they're all very closely intertwined with the United States government. Granted, we had a lot of donations come in the crypto space to the Donald Trump presidency and that whole campaign. But something that's unique now is that we've had Bo Hines, who has previously left working with the United States government, now working for USAT or Tether's now United States specific stablecoin, because hold up, USDT was not fitting the United States regulation. And Bo Hines, who wrote the Genius Act, is now CEO of a stablecoin. So all of these things are now intertwined and very closely related. And now we have Circle and Tether, the two biggest stablecoin providers in the world, now publicly traded or at least very intertwined with the United States government. Howard Lubnick and Cantor Fitzgerald also managed Tether's firm, or Tether's money. So now when you really start to look at the signs and see what Donald Trump is really telling you, well, he's pointing out that, hey, we are going to be using all of these things to help to try to pay off our debt. Now, this debt is spiraling out of control and we can't use taxes. And this is what the government has come to that conclusion. And as we get through the math here later on in this video, it's not just the United States that we're seeing all of this, right? We're seeing the ECB release a big presentation that they're going to limit holding limits of 3,000 euros per individual for their digital euros. And this was supposed to be about the release of this digital euros, but instead holding limits was mentioned over double-digit amount of times throughout this entire presentation. So I went through it so you didn't have to. But now we're starting to see the real truth behind all of these governments. No matter what they say, they realize that the Bitcoin and the crypto industries are running rampant. And look, you guys know on this channel, I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I'm not looking to, let's say, encourage the crypto space at the very least. But the way that these governments around the world look at Bitcoin and look at the crypto markets, they look at them exactly the same. That they're all in one, as we know that they are significantly different. But increasing this and having that holding limits realizes one thing, that the governments are realizing that they are losing control. And they're losing control of the dollar. And, they're losing control of the euro. This is why the ECB is now starting to try to release that CBDC, or that digital euro. They're looking at how China has done it. And look, I'm on YouTube, so I can't go through and describe everything in that, but do your own research on the crazy Orwellian things that are going on with the Chinese central bank digital currency. And this is why I think Bitcoin is more important than ever. We're going to get into all of that here in a minute, but you guys shouldn't need to sell your Bitcoin, to say the very least. So this is why I've partnered with my friends over at Salt Lending. You can go to saltlending.com/green-candle. They've got some of the best rates in the industry, starting at 8.95%, 12-month duration, and borrow up to 70% LTV. They've even got the Salt Shield, a no liquidation solution for you guys, so you can rest easy. There's no holding limits or anything like that. They're not going to liquidate you. And you don't have to worry about the potential of losing your Bitcoin or having to sell to cover some expenses, because I know the inflationary pressures that we're getting are astronomical, and they're going to keep going up with inflation, or with the Fed now cutting interest rates. Even though Scott Bessent is saying, inflation is dropping, don't worry. Well, it seems like those around globally have really been looking at the potential of how these banks can fail. And, we've already gone over on this channel how The Bank of England has talked about the potential of a bail-in, and how all of these banks are very intertwined with the United States government. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat how you guys see the banks really just operating in this crypto space, because we've seen Jamie Dimon do a full-fledged backflip where he's essentially said, I hate Bitcoin. I literally went over it on a previous live stream, but he said everything under the sun is better than Bitcoin. We've had Mark Cuban billionaires say that he'd rather have bananas than Bitcoin. And then now all these banks are saying, oh, we need to embrace blockchain technology because it's coming for us. And that's what they say, blockchain. That's their new buzzword. And they're saying all this to say, oh, you know what? We're here to help you guys. So even though we're doing this quote unquote bail-in and we're looking at, oh, how are we going to stay afloat and how are all these reserves actually going to get in? Don't lose trust on us, because as we know, what is fiat currency backed by, folks? It's backed by the full faith and credit of the government that issues it. It's not by a physical commodity like gold or silver. Its value comes from the government, right? And what did I mention already? The US dollar has seen its worst start in 50 years. Of course, they're blaming Trump's tariffs, but we all know here on the Green Candle channel, you guys are smart. You guys know already that these policies, when they get implemented, they take literally months in order to fully get implemented. And they take months to literally, fully take into effect and be seen in the overall government. So it's interesting when we're taking a step back and really looking at how this dollar is pumping out and where it's all going, because hey, for investors, it's not all bad news. But it seems like there's, quote, genuine animosity towards us. And is the world losing faith in the almighty US dollar? That trade war is forcing investors to confront with the possibility that the dominance of the US currency might fade or even end. So we're looking at the dollar really starting to go down, and you have to really take a step back and look at the potential of this hyperinflation, right? Because if we sit back and break down the math, and I went through some of the math here with Claude, we're sitting at $38 trillion worth of debt. The US GDP is around $30 trillion. So the debt to GDP ratio is around 125%, with the interest payments being about $1 trillion per year, with the average interest at 3 to 4 years. So by that projected debt hits 120 to 134% of GDP by 2035. But here's the debt spiral math, right? When the interest payments exceed that tax revenue growth, it takes about 17 to 18% in GDP and taxes. So the current interest is about 20% of tax revenue. So that will increase by 13% by 2035, allegedly, if we just keep on this track. But there's no magic debt to GDP ratio. And we have Japan already at 260%. But with the current interest rate, if that interest rate goes up, it's barely sustainable. This is why Trump wants to really lower those interest rates, right? Trump really wants to lower these interest rates because he sees all this. He sees that the world is losing faith in the United States dollar, so he's clamoring at them, hey, lower interest rates, because not only would this hurt us just financially, but, we're going to start to spiral out of control here. And this is why Trump has embraced the crypto market. Make no mistake here, folks. He's not just doing and embracing this because this is out of the goodness out of his heart. Look, I voted for the guy. I think he's a positive for the space. But let's not make any mistakes here. I truly believe that when we continue to see the primary deficit increasing, they're already borrowing to pay that interest, right? So historical hyperinflation, when this has 8 to 10%. So we're nearly halfway there. So here's the doom loop and the crisis scenario, which could happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So we have it where we are now, as I went over. The squeeze in 2027, which would be just in a couple years here, folks. We're nearing the end of 24, but that debt hits 130 to 140%. That interest is now 25 to 30% of tax revenue. And now we have to print money to cover the shortfalls or raise taxes or cut spending, which, as you guys have seen, cutting spending is statistically impossible for the government. They keep increasing all of that. And make sure you guys are hitting that like button. I'm pretty sure this one's getting shadow banned. And that debt would exceed that 150% of the GDP. Those interest payments keep on shooting up. And then this would be where hyperinflation starts in 2030, in just about 5 years, 5 to 10 years. So as that spiral keeps going on along, we have to say, okay, we need more money printing, and that's where things can get even worse. So, this trajectory, it could happen by 2035. It could happen a little bit later. But either way, the issue is that the math lines up and the math makes sense. And central banks are accelerating their gold purchases because they are uncertain about the dollar, right? Global trade. This is by the ECB. This is not by some sort of Bitcoin maxi. The ECB is releasing this. Evidence is most marked for certain countries which have distanced themselves geopolitically from the West, such as Russia, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, where the exports invoice were 10 to 50 percentage points lower in 23 than in 2015 to 19. So all of these guys, they're moving away from the euro. They're moving away from the dollar. And we have all these countries now looking at putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet because they realize even with Bitcoin sitting at $107,000 and crashing, it's still up 15% year to date. But you look at this chart and you tell me, when you have literally the best performing asset of all time, why wouldn't they want to hold it? They are realizing that the United States, since they've gotten off this hard money standard and have really just fallen down a cliff, well, this is where a lot of the issues have occurred, right? The fiat money. They're using this to control. So as we start to see the United States really ramp up this payment of their interest payments, they're going to start to try to accelerate their Bitcoin buying. I mean, I already showed you guys Trump wants to be number one. So you guys need to get yourselves some Bitcoin ASAP and put it in cold storage. The best place I think you could go is to Trezor. They have one of the most secure hardware wallets. You could go to the affiliate link down below or trezor.io. I encourage you guys to go to the affiliate link down below. You can go get the new Safe 7. It's the first ever quantum ready. It's fully wireless. You can connect it to your laptop if you wish via Bluetooth, and then get yourself a metal backup. This is how I store my Bitcoin, using a crypto steel and a Trezor. So if you go to cryptosteel.com/greencandle today, you guys can get yourselves the same setup that your boy here at Green Candle's got, and you can use promo code GreenCandle for 10% off here at cryptosteel.io. I've got the 24 seed word phrase, and you don't need a hammer or anything else. And they've got this great tamper seal so you know if anybody else has touched it. Now, the best part about all of this is that, if somebody, for example, had tampered with your seed phrase, you might not know, right? If it's on a metal plate, but if it is in a crypto steel case. You guys need to do that because everybody's losing faith in the dollar, and it's not just Russia or China or one of these big players, right? It's everybody globally. We're starting to see that go down. And this is why we're seeing gold purchases up like crazy. We're seeing Bitcoin go and skyrocket in flight. We're seeing all these different things really take off. So make sure you guys are hitting that like button for me. Please, I think this one's getting shadow banned, so share it with friends. Because I think, hey, when I'm using this kind of language on YouTube, they're not necessarily pushing it along. So make sure you guys are smoking that like Cheech and Chong, hitting that bell notifications, telling a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.